I've got so caught up with what I'm doing, I forgot to film half of this, so I'm sorry about that. So basically what I've done is I'm test fitting everything. So the shaft is in place, the thrust bearing's there. I've made a thrust plate for the bearing assembly. I've just sort of slotted it in place, and we're going for welding it to here. So I'm just starting to weld it in. I'm using gold rocks. These are really good, man. I'm like proper impressed with those. They're really nice, and the slag just drops off. It just lifts and falls off. I've still got some pretty standard ESAB that I need to burn through. They're alright, but they're nothing like these. These are amazing. Anyway, so yeah, I'm just getting this sort of tacks in place at the moment. I'm going to chamfer it, and I'm going to weld both sides, and I've got to put some braces in either side as well. Yeah, it's going all right actually. I'm quite happy. Bit of a slow start, but sometimes it is on a new job, and it's just feeling this into place so it's not pushing either one way or the other, and it's straight and upright, and it's all in the right place, and it's actually worked out quite nicely. That if you look at the level of the timbers here, if we could actually put a bit of timber across the top, we can put a deck board right across the whole thing, which has worked quite nicely. Because there was no plan to put this in at all. Someone was going to do something different, but I suggested the AquaDrive system, and so far it's going really well. I'm really happy. Right, I'll do some more welding and bring you back in a sec. So I've done the thrust assembly, or the thrust plate. Thought I'd follow the contours of the hull a little bit with that. I figured it's a good idea to make a propeller shaft guard. I've never seen one before. There probably is one, but I thought it was prudent to do that. Because if you dink or dent or damage the prop shaft even slightly, that's it. The dynamic balancing is completely shot to hell. So it just allows you to get in there and service it. It just creates a layer to, if someone or something was to be dropped with the boards not in there or something, it's just takes the impact. I mean, I've jumped on this. I'm pretty comfortable it will take a fall from somebody, because the AquaDrive system, as good as it is not cheap. They're worth every penny in my opinion, but yeah, you've got to look after them. Here we are. So just to show that the propeller shaft or intermediate shaft guard, what I come up with. So I'm just turn around a little bit. So the thrust assembly is going to go here in a sec. This is all painted Dambeline now. There's a hole in the bulkhead. I'm going to move these pipes from the chlorifier later. The shaft will run through there and then come up to the gearbox here. But just in case of anything falling through the floor, there's a prop shaft guard, so that lifts up. Just allows you to get into service and access it. And it just closes up by hand and just rests on itself. And it will take the weight of a man. I've jumped on it a few times, and I was actually light. And the idea is just, if you damage those shafts, which is one dink or one twat on it, or sideways, bad choice of word, but there we are. That's it. The balancing's out, and it can knacker them. And they're not cheap. They're really expensive. They're worth every penny, but you've got to look after it. So yeah, the idea is that there's a guard up as far as was comfortable to. And there we go. And that's just the build of the thrust assembly. The thrust plate, sorry, thrust assembly is just here. prop shaft's there, and the actual propeller shaft is down on the side there somewhere. I'm going to put that in a minute if the painting's been done. I'm pretty sure he's finished with this though. Oh, cool. Next bit then. Good morning, this is another day. It's actually Monday, the following week. I think it's week 2 from your perspective. The date is eluding me right now. Is it the 14th or something? Anyway, I'll double check that in a minute. So we've got loads done. I've got the thrust bearing assembly and the prop shaft all in place, which is fabulous. The prop shaft, or the intermediate prop shaft, was delivered at the weekend for me by Nick from TW, an absolute gentleman. He drove from Manchester and brought this down in person because it's excessively long and no courier will touch it, but he did visit family, so it made sense, and I really appreciate it, Nick. It's really good of you to do that. I know it was handled safely. So I've lined this up, everything all lines up nicely. My prop shaft guard, the hole I've cut through the bulkhead there, everything is spot on. No adjustments will be needed for that, so I just need to clamp it all together with I've got an adapter plate for the gearbox to the Aquadrive Intermediate, which is, I'll just dig this stuff all out. This thing here, that's been made to order, so that register will register up onto the gearbox output flange, and then the intermediate will bolt up to this side of the adapter here, which is great. So I've got everything now to get the shaft in place. In terms of the engine, I did the winding control last week. That gives us throttle, so you literally wind it clockwise and it will, let me just head down this end and I'll show you what I did. So that now works on this mechanism here, and that pushes down on the throttle linkage down on the engine, and that gives us more power. It's a little bit stiff at the moment, but I suspect it'll be lighter once the engine runs. I'm sort of half tempted to suggest we get another support in the middle here, because it's a bit wobbly this, but I don't know, maybe that's acceptable. We'll see how we get on. So I've got to bolt up the shaft, as I said before. I've made a bracket here for these little mechanisms and these swivels. And these are for the gearbox selection. There'll be a rod that runs along the roof parallel with this shaft, and that will run back up and down, and it's going to have that nice little ball detent, which is this thing here. And this ball detent actually just creates a positive position on the rod as you move it, so you have at least neutral, and that's a physical feeling that you know you're in neutral, and it should keep it there and it shouldn't let it slide forward or backwards, which is a safety thing as well. And I'm half tempted to just advance it fully, mark up the shaft and give it a head and a stern position, so you know you've got full selection and that there's no guesswork with where it is, which I think is a nice way of doing it. I wired up the engine as well, so that's now got cables, battery positive cables that run over the loom, protected up to this master switch here, and inside the battery box is a BEP Mega or Master Fuse. I've rated it at 300 amps because the cable run is 300. there's a service tail on the door, because the battery box at the front here, that actually opens like that. Once I've tied it up, I'll show you all that. So that's nice. The engine panel there at the front, I'm a bit too far to get over to at the minute, but there's a simple switch for on, red light for alternator charge, and then the push button for starting. So I wired that up the other day, and that goes down the front of the engine, runs down the bearer, and then underneath the fuel tank and up inside the current cable trunking, which is on the wall. So there's conduit to trunking. Exhaust is going to go in today as well. So lots to do still, but I've got fuel lines to do as well. Lots to do, but I'm hoping to have this pretty much done, what I've been commissioned to do. Cooling pipe will be copper running around the wall, around the tank, and then it will dip down and come back up on itself because the hot outlet for the engine's there, and the cold for the engine's nice and easy. It's just simply from here swooping up to this point here, which this is a bit wrong at the minute. We'll spin that 180 degrees maybe. But yeah, so far so good. It's been going well. I think I'm happy with what we've done and achieved. I've spoken to the guy who owns the boat. He seems to be happy with what we've achieved. I haven't bolted the engine down yet, so I want to make sure this prop shaft it locates, and it's just perfect. I'm really happy with that hole I made, and everything is good. So I'll get some holes drilled and some bolts, and we'll commit to its position. That's where it now lives. I'm waffling. I'm quite excited. And then I may have to have tomorrow off because it's my wedding anniversary. I completely forgot. I'm terrible. Even my wife forgot. My mother-in-law had to remind us. She came around with an anniversary present. We both looked at each other and went, oh my God, what do we do? 2 years in, it's going great. Anyway, enough waffling, let's do some work. Right, and get this end of the aqua drive system clamped in and torqued down. I've got the instructions which tell me how to break things professionally. All jokes aside, no, this is the manual. It's good to just reference it. It tells you what's in what and how tight to do the bolts. They supplied me with some thread lock, which is good stuff. All brand new cap head bolts. I think these are 12.9s. They are, so they're high tensile. They're really good ones. New nylocks as well. Proper job. So they've got all the correct torque settings and things like that. So I'll double check my clamping forces I used the other day. Was a bit stiff. I repacked this gland the other day and it's still a bit tight, so brand new equipment and all that. So yeah, I've got to double check everything and make sure I've got everything tight according to the book, because I've just done it by memory, and I didn't have this to hand at the time. It wasn't really that important at the time, but now this is the final point of commitment. Go through the manual and read it and use the tolerances, because these are the manufacturer tolerances. In fact, I think Nick has even highlighted for me specific references to which he suggests I work with, and I'm going to trust that information. Okie dokie. Somewhere I've got a cup of tea. Let me reach that, because no Englishman can work without a cup of tea. It's just the way we are. Right, when I got the correct bit for my drives. What size is it on here? It doesn't say. 8. There we go. Right, and the new bottle of. I'm going to cut that open. That's fine. Oh, that went. Oh, God, it comes out quick sometimes. I forget. I'm supposed to be saying a liberal amount, but what comes out if you're not careful. Maybe, I think, actually apply this once. Butterfingers. let's try what those actually stay in. I might have to get a knuckle for this. It's a bit close to the fixings. Right, we'll go the other end because I need to get the shaft connected up to the gearbox before I can spin it and then get round everything comfortably. I don't want to spin it where it is because it will start to scratch and get damaged, and it's not the sort of thing that we do working properly. Well, at least I try not to. So, what's the plan here? I think, does that mean? Okay, should give me enough room to go in there, like so. So these are countersunk in, which is nice, because they don't get buried and get lost inside. Makes a flat, flush surface, which is cool. So these are just nylox, which are good. So we'll torque them up according to the book as well. Fiddly, cumbersome, but we've done it. Good. Right. Let me just take off the tension on my torque wrench, because you shouldn't leave them under tension. Weaken the springs, or reduce its life expectancy. And they're not cheap. Okay, so just put this into the equation, which I don't think I've done yet. Open up the prop card. I say prop, it's a short-term word, but it can be confusing. Prop can mean prop or propeller. So it's an intermediate prop shaft, and when I say intermediate, there's your actual propeller shaft, which goes through the stern gland there. There's your thrust bearing. This is an intermediate shaft, so it goes in the middle, intermediate. I don't know. Well, I'll chew my words. What I haven't mentioned before is this is a custom length, but these are CV joints, constant velocity joints. There's one at each end. Think of them as a knuckle, and it allows the prop shaft to spin up to a certain inclination. So that would be straight on, and that would be an inclination of some description. So it allows it to spin no matter what you're doing. Now with a much shorter system, so say your thrust bearing is there, intermediate coupling is in here, so the two CV joints are literally butted together, the engine can be wobbling around and shaking about on really soft mounts to take out all the vibration as humanly possible. This engine's rigidly mounted, so it's physically bolted straight down to the bearer. There's no vibration on that at all. It could be added later. It wouldn't be hard to do. You just jack it up slightly and slide some timber under if you wanted to. Timber was a traditional way of doing that, so an oak or another kind of hardwood. I don't pretend to know all about woods because it's not my field expertise. Sorry it's a little bit dark, I've had to close the hatch because the rain's coming. Hopefully you can just make out what I'm doing. So all I've done is taken, wow, oh god, I have to squeeze in some very small spaces. All I've done is taken some 8mm rod, it's only mild still, and I've put a thread on each end so it creates a way of securing these ball joints. do them up tight. There's no need to put a nut on there because they're not really going to go anywhere. If you had two opposing threads, so a right and a left-handed thread, or right and a left-handed thread, then as you wind it, it would force these two apart separately. But there's no need for that. That would be a tensioning thing. If you want to make this wider, just literally undo that and wind it out, give it a bit more space. Let's see where we are with this. Okay. It just goes in like that. Well, that's nice and satisfying. So a little push down. Actually, I think that is a little bit too long, because if you look at the line of sight here, so give you an example, I've actually got a piece of rod with me, so that would be the rod. It's going to foul on this, so I'm going to make that, just cut that back a little bit to make it a little bit shorter, and that should then give me a bit more room, because if I bring this mechanism this way a bit more, as I come back, we're going to clear that nicely and go forward nicely. So that's why I've just cut that thread on this end a lot longer than this end, just because I wasn't sure. Even if you measure it, sometimes you still have room to adjust things. So I've done that. I'm going to take 10mm off the end with my grinder, go and do that outside quick, and I'll be back in a sec. So, in case you haven't realised what this is, I imagine you probably have, this is the exhaust system. So it's all BSP threaded system, so British Standard pipe threads. This is a 2-inch size piping system. This flexible bellows is to allow for vibration. One could argue, because I'm mounting this rigidly, you could get away with not having this, but you know, things move and you shouldn't fight that. You've got to work with it. And manage it the best you can. So a bit of flex is a good idea. It will stop things cracking and giving up later. And these aren't that expensive. These are quite inexpensive. The owner of the boat bought this one here, but it's just the way we were going to go straight up with the exhaust. I even put a hole in the ceiling, but it wasn't going to work with the cleat that I've welded up and created on the roof. So you can return that, I think. But this one helps us come up to here, and then once I've dropped the exhaust a bit, that should meet that just nicely, and it'll work out. I've got to bring the exhaust down slightly, so that will then meet comfortably. We've got a union here, so this union simply allows you to unscrew it quickly and easily and effectively. So if you need to service the exhaust box, or for example this box was built by the Haydens, vintage diesels. And what they've done is they put a bolted on flange, so you can unbolt this and actually then pack it with wadding if you wanted to. At the moment it's simply an expansion chamber, so it will make a nice big loud pop, and it will be very classic and very loud and very traditional. But if that gets a bit much, or if it's spitting a bit of rubbish up, you can put some exhaust packing in nice and easily and good to go. So, and it'll help muffle the sound down a bit if it sounds a bit much. So anyway, I'm digressing again with my waffling. So I am now doing a little bit of wiring, nothing major, just a simple connection to this original panel. I didn't do the panel, I'm simply adding there's a few buttons like the red. Right, let me get this clear. So the yellow, the brown, the white, and these cables I'm putting in, they're just running to the engine. The engine at the moment has a very simple system: a starter motor, an alternator. There's nothing else electrical on the engine at all. At the moment it will be a charge light. So this is the main ignition on, so that'll be on, the light will come on, and then you push to start. It's that simple at the moment. I believe there's plans for an extended panel, but at the moment that's all it is. So I've run the cables down through here. This is all existing. I've put this piece in here, so I've got to clip this all up in a minute. I'll use P-clips and drill and tap, and it'll run along the bearer there and up into the engine. So yeah, a little bit of wiring. Keep him busy, keep him busy.